let the recording start. Yeah. So let us start the third session. So basically, it will be on how to deal with machine learning or the programming towards machine learning by using Python. Many of you may be familiar to this and may be working on this, but again, this is to address those participants who are new to this domain and they are again thinking from where to start. Morning also somebody asked me uh, which one is a better programming language, whether the MATLAB or the Python, which language we need to see. So I just want to show you or give you a feel that how easy it is to deal with Python and how the packages are there which helps us to write the codes. And now that we have covered a little bit of background on what machine learning is and some of the major types of machine learning problems, there is nothing like getting started with our own machine learning applications in Python. Okay, so in today's session, we will be using Google Colab and we'll be using some of the Python packages. Let me share it. Yeah. So we'll be using Google Colab. Let me just type it so that you'll get a feel of what is Google Colab. Okay. So this is as written here is a collaboratory or Colab for short, allows you to write and execute Python in our own browser. Okay, so basically today we'll be dealing with Python packages, scikit-learn, which is a library of machine learning algorithms. Then we'll be taking support from NumPy. NumPy is a Python library for scientific computing that contains support for some fundamental data structures used by scikit-learn. So like arrays, specifically arrays, vectors, matrices, 3D arrays, n-dimensional arrays, and so on. Then also we'll be using pandas. Pandas is again another Python library for data manipulation and analysis that helps towards reading the database, whether it is a text file, whether it is in XLS or it is in CSV files. So all these files can be imported and again it can be saved by using the Python package that is called pandas. Okay. Now again coming to this Google Colab, it is a free cloud service and now it supports the good part of it. It supports the free GPU. Okay, we talk about a lot many discussions go with regard to whether GPU and CPU. Many people don't afford for the laptops having this GPU support. So Google Colab, once you have the internet connectivity, Google Colab can be used and Google Colab gives the support that is having the free GPU. So we can improve our Python programming in this platform. We don't have to go through the hurdles of installing packages and setting the path. So all these things become little easy for us by using this Google Colab. However, this Google Colab is working on our own Google Drive. So one of the requirement is we need to log into our Gmail account, and through the Gmail account, through the Google Drive, we can save the database, we can save the files in the Google Drive. From there, we can open. So first of all, we need to have space in our Google Drive from where we'll be using it. So whatever algorithms we discussed in the morning, so now I'll be showing some of the results for those algorithms. And basically it is a kind of, I can say, demonstration because I feel it will be little difficult to have hands-on sessions um, by using this virtual platform. I don't know how much or what kind of background knowledge you have, what kind of programming facility you have, or what specification is your computer or laptop is having. So some people may say that yes, they already know this, they can be faster, and some may be little slower. So I don't claim that it is a kind of hands-on, but yes, I'll be showing you some of the demonstrations. Precisely, I have already made something available in, or have kept something available in my Google Drive. So I'll be opening those things and again I'll be doing it. Suppose this is the Google Colab. So since I'm in my or logged into my, just a minute. Am I audible?
Madam, yes. Yes, madam. It's audible.
Yes, ma'am.
I got confused. That is another drawback of this virtual. Yeah. Yes. So I was talking about this Google Colab, from where to start. So if you look at this Google Colab, here you have the options to open a new notebook, or already existing notebook can be opened through this open notebook. Okay, so I'll start with a new notebook and show you how it appears. So in this, it is called notebook because we can have two different kinds of cell. It can be a code where I can write my program, or it can be a text where I can comment for this code. So first of all, here I can give the title. Since I have not given title for last 26 Python programs, it is coming one after the other. Now it is the 26th one. So let me give a title to this. Okay. So if I click on this one, I get a text box. This is, I can say that, demo for day one. Okay. So with this hash, the letters will be like title. Okay. If I go to the code cell, so if I click on the code cell, I get a code. So whatever code I write this, I can execute. Suppose you say that import numpy as NP. So by simply clicking on this arrow, this cell will be executed. The very first time when you execute it, it takes little bit longer time, but subsequent cells will be easily executable. Okay, so this is how to begin with. Just go to your or log into your Gmail account, search for Google Colab, click on this Google research from .google.com. So you'll get the Google Colab browse link, and from that there you can open a new file. You can write your code by clicking on this code cell and generating a cell, and wherever required you can create a new cell for the text and you can comment for that particular cell. So that is why it is a notebook. You can have the program and the notes hand in hand, like our Jupyter notebook. Apart from Google Colab, also we have the Anaconda, Spider, and Simply Python. All those things are okay, but there sometimes we face problem. Here also there are problems. I am not saying that it is problem free, but for this online demo, I prefer this one because I didn't want to get into those path setting and how to install this Python. Okay, so already I have some codes. So as I said, it is a kind of demonstration. So I'll not take much of the time to type down this. Rather, I'll show how these codes are working and what actually I wanted to share with you. So to first begin with the first cell, here is my first cell. Okay, so which says that I'm using this thing. I'm using the NumPy package. Okay, so NumPy is basically for numerical computation. So in this, I'll consider two arrays. So the two arrays are here. I have named these arrays are the time. Okay, so the first 1D array, I have taken this as time. I have given 6 values, 6, 8, 11, 14, 16, 18, and 19. In Python, there can be 3 different kind of such things like list, then arrays, and dictionary. A simple list, we have the square bracket, then the array comes with the round bracket, and the dictionary that comes with the curly bracket. So in this case, I can say that this is an array, that is why I have the round bracket. Inside this, in the square, I have a list. Simply, that is a single row of the array time. Similarly, I have defined the temperature. So time and temperature, these are the two arrays which I consider as the x and y. So I'll plot them saying that one of the axis is the temperature time axis, and that is the x-axis, and the y-axis is the temperature. Okay. So to have this plot, again so coming to the, so let me run this one. Yeah. So next is, this is my text cell where I'll be showing you, so I can edit this also, of polynomial fitting. So we'll do the polynomial fitting. There is no learning. For very first thing, I'm showing you how to deal with this Python programming that is in the Google Colab platform. So in the text box, I have commented it that it is the demo session and for the polynomial fitting. So for the polynomial fitting, I'll show you some plots. That is why I have taken another package, that is the matplot library. Matplot library. Okay. So here this matplot library is again another library. Okay. So if I keep my cursor on this, it shows me some detail about it. So in the matplot library, I have all the packages which are used to visualize the results, visualize the data, and interpret through the graphs and different plots. Okay. So first purpose is to have this x versus y, that is time versus temperature. Along the x label, I have labeled it. It is more or less same as your MATLAB programming. So here for this import, I have named this library as PLT. So wherever I am using PLT, that stands for the package matplotlib.pyplot. Similarly, wherever I write NP, that stands for the package NumPy. Okay. So along the x, so the x label is time, y label is temperature, and I have kept this title as temperature versus time. Okay. So if I run this, it gives me a plot. Okay. Since I am not mentioning that it is a line plot, so simply it will come as the scatter plot or the dots corresponding to this time and the temperature. So these are the dots for the values shown here. At time 6, temperature is 4, time 8, it is 7, 11, it is 10, 14, 12, 16, 11. This way I have all the 7 points. Okay. So next, my goal objective is to fit it or have a polynomial fitting. Okay. So polynomial fitting, without getting into machine learning also, simply NumPy can also be used for polynomial fitting. It's a very powerful package, NumPy. Okay. So here first I'll show you how to use this NumPy for fitting of these points. Okay. So that is the polynomial fit. Okay. So here for this, so any doubt about that, how to know that yes, this kind of function is available within the NumPy, or this kind of function is available within pandas. So for all of these packages, there is a cheat sheet available in the by the community. So if you Google for NumPy cheat sheet, or you Google for panda cheat sheet, for matplotlib cheat sheet, so basically it will tell you what are the supports or what are the kind of packages it is having. So everything is free. So from the cheat sheet, through that community blogs, you can have all these supports. If you type that how to fit the polynomials using NumPy, definitely you will get this polyfit function. So if I do this, the polyfit function from the NumPy, to fit this xy, that is time and temperature. Suppose I have kept it as order 1. Okay, first order, that means it is a straight line. Okay, so if I do it for the straight line, I require two parameters, that is the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so this beta, the result of this polynomial fitting will give me two values corresponding to the slope and the y-intercept. Now I can use this slope and the y-intercept to get the output or the polynomial function. Okay, and if I plot it, so I'll show you how I did this plot. So here what I have done is between 6 and 19, 6 and 19 are the range of the x I have considered in this data. So 6 and 19, so I have taken the range of the plot in that, and I have taken 100 points, and for all these 100 points I have evaluated the output, that is y-axis, so that I am plotting. So xp and the p of xp, p is the polynomial function, this p here I have defined as the polynomial function. So this p will take the input as xp and produce the output. So these two are getting plotted. So here you can say that though I have the points, which is, or these points are more or less related by a polynomial function, but while trying to fit it by having a first order function, it didn't work. Or I can say that this is the situation for underfitting, the situation of underfitting. Now, if I increase the order of this polynomial, suppose I make this polynomial fitting a second order system, then again I will run it. Okay, now you'll see that this beta is having three coefficients. Okay, second order, so I get three coefficients. So again I define my polynomial function with the coefficients of beta. If now I plot it, more or less I can see that yes, I am having a curve which is fitting better than the previous function. Okay, so gradually I can increase this thing. Suppose I make it 7. So here I can see that my beta values, the number of coefficients have been increased. So for order 7, I have 8 beta values. Okay. So again, I can fix up my function p, and again I plot it. So now you can see that almost all the points are on this polynomial or on this curve. Okay, so this is how the curve fitting, without getting into the machine learning or any kind of other function, with the support of NumPy also we can do the curve fitting, which normally is used for many of the regression applications. Now let us get into the regression. Okay, a little bit of machine. This was the first discussion the overfitting. So here I can show the concept as I increase the order, then I can have better fittings, but not necessarily that it is a generalized approach towards fitting, because these are the sample 7 points, but maybe later on I can generate some more points which are not lying on this because of the noisy and the data, and because if they don't fit, then we call that is a situation of overfitting. Now coming to regression. Okay, so apart from NumPy, which is for numerical calculations, Matplotlib, that library is for visualization. We have a very powerful package consisting of all the machine learning algorithms. That is the sklearn, or that is called the scikit-learn. sklearn or scikit-learn is very powerful package used for machine learning. Only for up to the MLP and all the conventional machine learning algorithms we discussed in the morning. It is not for deep learning. When we discuss about deep learning, then definitely we should use the package either the TensorFlow or the Keras, and there are many more, Sklearn, many more. So sklearn only up to what we discussed in the morning. So here in this demonstration, we'll have the use of sklearn. Okay, so there are many different algorithms we discussed. One of those algorithms is the decision tree regressor. Okay, so here some of the functions I have shown just to show that how powerful is this one. So from sklearn tree, I can import decision tree. Subsequently, I'll show you to import the support vector machine, to import the base classifier, all those things subsequently I'll be showing. So in this one, if it is the decision tree regressor, and apart from this, sklearn also consists of many common data sets. So sometimes the data sets we create locally, sometimes data sets we download from the internet, save it in the computer and use them. Sometimes we use the data set available within these packages. So there are many data sets available in the sklearn packages, this package. So one of the data set is towards predicting the house price. Okay, so that is called the here I have imported the data set one, and from that I'll take this Boston. So Boston is what is the house price at different locations of the Boston city in USA, for which they have collected each of these house having 12 features. These 12 features are considered as the input to the model, and model is supposed to predict the cost of that house. Okay. So then comes the evaluation process. Okay, so we can use some of the metrics to optimize the parameters. So here it is simply I can have the mean square error since it is a regression application. Okay, then also we normally shuffle the data. So if I have the prices given in one order, maybe the ascending or descending, it is always better to shuffle the data so that the model will be more generalized and adaptive in nature. Then whatever data is there, that can be again divided into training samples and the test samples. So for that also we have inbuilt functions, or that function, particular function is called train test split. Okay. So these are the, so first of all, normally we import these packages. Again, let me tell you, this is not that everything I have written. Many of these codes are available online. So anytime you get stuck up at any point, you just Google it. Definitely will find some similar support or some people also having the same problem, and many have responded to it. So that is how Python has become very popular. There are community to support each other. There are community to clarify the confusions. So there are communities who are developing these packages and making those packages available free. So that is why the Python has become popular. It is not that it has some powerful functions or it has something better than MATLAB. The only thing is, first is the license, second is the community support. So now day by day, the community support is increasing for the Python, particularly in the domain of data science and machine learning. Not as much in other domains like communication engineering or other applications. But yes, if it is machine learning, it is 100 times active, better active than the MATLAB community. Now coming to this housing data, as I mentioned, each data point has 12 input parameters that affect the price of the house. Okay. So here I have taken the data set, and simply I can use the load. So this loads the data set. So now let me add another code here. Okay, let me take first the features, then I'll show you. So the housing data, so now I have taken, it will have two parts, the data part and the target part. I'm talking about this cell. So data part is about these features, and the Y, that is the target, is about the price of those houses. So it is a supervised learning. So already there are some data available for which the price is given. So if I say a total, there are, here I have also computed the length. Total there are 506 samples. So here if I write x0, Okay, so here are the values for x0. Okay, so this way you can have different values and you can see how these values are affecting the model. Okay, so this cell is about shuffling. Okay, so the data can be shuffled simultaneously, both the input features, that is the housing data here x and the y, and then we get the x and y. Okay, as I said in the morning, that whatever data we have, we divide that into training, testing. Okay, so corresponding to training input, we'll have the training output. Similarly, corresponding to test inputs, will have this train test split that divides the input x and y into the training set and the testing set. Remember, it has to be in right order. Here I give x at first, then the output, that is y. Accordingly, I'll get the splitting of x, that is into the x train and x test. So y comes next. So for the y, again I'll have the splitting, that is y train and y test. So here I have said the test size is 0.33. That means out of this total 503 samples, okay, 66% I'll be keeping towards the training of the model and 33% I'll be keeping towards testing of the model. I can reduce or increase depending on whether I have a complex data set or I'm expecting that it is not that robust. I may not get the test accuracy of the appropriate label. So again, it is depending on your application and choice. Next comes the random state. Random state, see everything, how it is getting selected, how it is getting shuffled, and then we have to fix up equal amount of data both in training and testing, equal statistics, not amount, equal statistics of data in training set and the test set. So the random state keeps that distribution fixed. Suppose again and again I'm executing this code. If I have this random state defined, then I'll get same set of data. Okay, so then it is simple. I don't have to write the codes for this decision tree regressor. I don't have to write the procedure or steps for this algorithm. Already it is there in that package. So simply I have to import it and use it. So once I define, now my regressor is the decision tree regressor taken from the sklearn. So here, yeah, if I keep my cursor on this, I can see that what are the inputs I can give to this decision tree regressor. The criterion by default, it is mean square error, splitter, so max depth, how many? So here I have defined max depth. That means it is a tree, maximum branching up to 4 labels. Okay. So again, this is under our control. I can take the default value or I can give my choiced value, and that accordingly the package will calculate and decide the model. So here, if I click on this, now R1 is first defined as the regressor tree model, and then I did the fitting of that model by using the training sets. Okay, so now my model is ready. It is simple. I don't have to write the code. I don't have to look into whether it is the information theory, how to compute the entropy. That is not required. So that is the advantage by having this package. We can use as it is, and only I can modify whatever input I want to give to this package. So I can use that model R1 to predict the outputs. Once I get the output, I can compute the mean square error. Okay, so here you can see that I have some 508 samples. For that, I got the mean square error, which is something around 0.05. Okay, so so these are the values: test, y test, and y predict. Okay, so more or less they are looking similar. Somewhere maybe that slight difference is there. That is why I have the error. Okay, so here also I'm having this decision tree regressor. Next is, I'll show you some classification models. Okay. So again, I'll have some simple data, and in those, let me generate this data. Here I have defined the input as two-dimensional input. Suppose the xi, the x1, here I have 3, 1, then 2, 5, 1, 8. So two-dimensional input, and I'm defining the class output. Again, binary classification I'm considering. For this 3, 1, class is 0, 2, 5, class is 1, 1 and 8, class is 1. So this second line defines the class corresponding to the inputs in the first line. Let me just classify. If yi is 0, that belongs to class 0. So if it is 1, then that belongs to class 1. So I'm defining these arrays, NP arrays. X is the input for I in range length X. Okay. So here the range or the length of X is total. There are 8 values. So I will go over all these 8 values. Wherever it finds the yi is 0, that will put that into class 0. If the yi is 1, it will put that into class 1. Okay. Now next comes to plot it and get a feel of it. So here I am using again the scatter plot. For class 0, I am using blue squares, and for class 1, I am using red cross. Okay, so the markers are cross and this. So I get something like this. If I plot it, I get a plot like this. That means here this cross corresponds to the samples from class 1, and these blue squares corresponds to the samples from class 0. So visually, I can say that it is a very simple statement. I can simply draw a straight line. Possibly, it is a straight line of slope 1 that will separate out the samples of class 0 from the samples of class 1. So, since it is very simple, again, I will not get into the learning aspect of it. Simply, I'll plot to show you what is the meaning of decision boundary. That means here it is the decision boundary with slope 1. Here I have taken line x, that is range 10, means it will have the points 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 up to 10. And same thing for y. So when both the values are same, I can say that it is a straight line with slope 1. So next I have plotted. So this is the figure scatter plot with all the samples of class 0 marked in blue with blue squares and red cross, and in between the line that separates this sample, that is called the decision boundary, is in black. Okay. Now, without having this line designed by ourselves, or since it was easy, I said that yes, I can draw a line to give you a feel that yes, what is this line is, or what is the decision boundary is. Okay. Now, let us get into the little bit of machine learning, that is by using the logistic regression. Yeah. So here I have taken the sklearn, which I said again is a library consisting of machine learning algorithms. So here, if I keep the cursor there, you can see that it is for the logistic regression where the inputs can be penalty, that means how loss function, L2 loss function. Then I have the tolerance, how much is the tolerance acceptable, C, that means how many errors are acceptable. So different parameters I can give. So if you further Google it, you can find what are the options I can give for those selections or those parameters. So simply I am considering a scenario of 3 classes, 0, 1 and 2. So why here having three different values. So it is not a binary classification. In this, I am considering a situation where I am having three classes. So 0 corresponds to class 1, suppose, then 1 corresponds to class 2, and 2 corresponds to class 3. Okay. Since it is a classification, now I'll consider logistic regression. Okay. So logistic regression is for the classification. So here I have the inputs, different values of x1 and y1 for these inputs and corresponding y values. So I have defined the solver, that is a kind of loss function LBFGS. Okay. So and C is the penalty for misclassification. Okay. Yes, definitely I'll be sharing it. So with this logistic regression, I can simply do the fitting. So the model is, so this is CL stands for just a name. So it can be C1, it can be anything. So that is the name of my model. So now I need to fit it on the samples X and Y. Okay. Simply if I run it, so this does the importing of this package, defining X and Y, defining the classifier model, naming the model and fitting the model. So now that is done. Then comes to visualize what has happened. Okay. So from this, I'll take what is the range of X minimum and maximum, what is the range of Y minimum and maximum. So with that range, now I have to create one mesh grid, the space with the grids. And I have taken that step size for this grid is with an interval of 0.01. Okay. So with these intervals, with the range given, the mesh grid has been created. So all these are there in the NumPy to create this mesh grid and arrange the values from X minimum to X maximum. Okay. So now the mesh output, already I know that my classifier is CL. I'll use this classifier CL to predict the values of Y and plot it in a figure. So if I plot it, let me show you. So there are three range of class. So one is class 1. This black one is for class 1, suppose. Then the white one is for class 2. And this gray one is for class 3. So all the mesh values based on the prediction will be assigned with the class name. So this says that this is the total range of the class. In three different colors, I have defined three different range of these classes. Okay. And on this, subsequently, we have plotted the X and Y along with the class and the color. Okay. So X and Y along with the class, the C is equal to Y, that C stands for the color, and this A stands for the size of this scatter plots. Okay. So here all these samples have been properly classified. They are in respective classes. So there is a wide gap. Otherwise, I would have shown you by different values of C how this would look like. Where is that? Yeah. So here this C stands for the penalty of misclassification. Let me see if I have that kind of gap. No, it is not that visible. Otherwise, you can see that if I change this, no, not that visible. Anyway, so this is one way to have the machine learning, that is through the logistic regression, to get the samples classified into different classes and visualize this through the matplotlib package. So same thing. Yeah. So next one is again the demonstration of Bayes classifier. Okay. So as I said, it is for the differences here. I was having the linear model. From that, I was importing the logistic regression. Same I'll be using here a naive Bayes. From that, I'll be using Gaussian naive Bayes. Okay. So in this case, instead of having some dummy database created by myself here, X and Y, I created the dummy database. I'll take some database from the file. Okay. Say, let me got it. Okay. So suppose I have this file in my laptop. Now I want to bring it to the Google Colab or Google Drive, and from there I have access to this one. So through this, I can import or I can upload that. So it is there in my desktop here. Okay, I can select the folder. From that, I can select the file, and when I open it, so that will be loaded to my current folder, that is a Google Drive, where I'm having this code. So once I switch it off or turn it off, again this goes out of my folder. So next time again I run it, I need to bring the file to this Google Drive. Okay. So if it is there, now I can read this file. Okay. So multivariate data, and it is a text file. So this pandas is used to deal with importing of files or the data frames. So whether it is text file or CSV file or Excel file, or it can be any other kind of file. So there are various different commands to read these files by using this package pandas. Okay, so here again the alias name of pandas is PD. Through this PDs, I am reading this data multivariate 1.txt in the and assigning the name df. So yeah, so once I have this df, okay, subsequently I can also, it is a data frame, so I can get the information about it, what is there in this file. So total you can see there are 3 columns, okay, 0, 1, 2, and there is no missing value, none null. That means there is no null value or missing value. Total there are 399 rows. Okay, so column 0 and 1 are the floating numbers, whereas column 2 is the integer entries, integer values. So I can say that column 2 is having the class number, whereas 0 and 1 are the input features, okay, which are the real numbers. Okay. So accordingly, I can define my input x. Okay. For this df, the I locations, so this column starts for all the rows. So all the rows and 0 to 2, that means 0 and 1, x1 and x2, 2 positions of the columns are considered as the input, and y is the output. So -1, again that is the from the right side, the last column. So -1 is the last column, that is from the right side. So it is the class number, that is the second column. Now I have defined my input and the output. I'll define the classifier as Gaussian naive Bayes. Okay, simply I'll do the fitting by giving this input and output. Do the prediction. So all these things remain same. How to fit it, how to predict it, whether it is the Gaussian function, whether it is the logistic regression, whether it is any SBM or MLP, any classifier, those things remain same. Okay. Now again, you can compute the accuracy. Okay. For this one, I'm getting almost 99.5% accuracy. So these are again the plots. I'll not discuss again. It is the previous plot. Get the minimum and the maximum. Get the step size. Get the values. Put it in the different form. So here it is. Okay. So with this plotting, you can say that in this particular data or in this text file, comma separated values which I have 4 different classes. Okay. So my accuracy is not 100%, it is 99.5%. That means there are some wrong predictions, okay, wrong classifications. So that means here you can see that here there is a sample which belongs to this category, that is the pink category, but it has fallen in the range of purple class. Similarly, there is another sample here from the brown class that has moved into this black domain or the range of this blue classes. Okay, so here is the output. So normally these lines are the class boundaries. So any sample of one class enters into the domain of another class, that is considered as the wrong classification. Okay, so with that also you get that reflects in the accuracy of this model. Apart from the accuracy, we can also see the confusion matrix. So subsequently again I'll show you for another analysis the confusion matrix. So here I have considered all these samples for the training of the model. So later I can also consider some of the samples divided into train and for used for the training of the model, and some other samples I can use to test the model. That is, by splitting it into two categories, train, test, split, I can use it to predict the model. So slightly instead of 99.5, now the accuracy has gone down to 99, not much. Okay. So confusion matrix, this I'll show you later on, because sklearn is not having a very good representation of confusion matrix. Rather, in Keras, the confusion matrix has better representation. Okay. Now coming to the other values. Apart from accuracy, also we spoke about the sensitivity and specificity, or the precision and recall. So class wise also we can see that if for class 0 all the samples are accurately classified, and same for the class 3 all the samples are accurately classified, whereas for class 1 and 2 one samples from this class 1 going into class 2, similarly here also some misclassification. So that is why here I get 0.96 and here I am getting 0.96, and total the accuracy falls to 0.99. Okay, so this is all about simple models by using the sklearn, regression, Bayes classification. Morning we discussed these things, so that is why I felt that let me give you a feel. What do I mean by simple regression? What do I mean by logistic regression? What do I mean by naive Bayes as a classifier? There are also inbuilt functions to deal with HMM, GMM. All these things are available inside this sklearn. So this is the first demo. Next I'll show you morning. Also we discussed about support vector machine. Okay, so in the next demo I'll show you how powerful this support vector machine is. So any queries till now, the previous demonstration? If anybody is having, see, I feel that yes, this kind of virtual platform having the programming is not very interactive, but still then when there is no option, at least to give you some feel, so that subsequently when you look at these codes, you will be in a position to learn what really happened. So if anybody is having any queries in the first discussion, you can unmute and ask me. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, will you be able to share the codes with us?
Whatever right now I'm showing, yes, those codes will be shared with you. Even if though I don't share, definitely it will be shared from the AICT portal. It is mandatory. Whatever will be happening in this, all these things will be recorded, and after this FDP, I'll be uploading everything to the AICT portal.
Okay, ma'am. Thank
So
you.
from there, you will have the access to all these codes.
Ma'am, is it a day by day? Every day we can access it at the end of the day?
Sorry?
Can we access it at the end of the day, ma'am?
End of the day, if you want, are you really interested for this? It is there in the Google Drive also. I can share.
Can you share that link in Google Drive?
Yes.
So that-
So,
That will be
okay,
really nice, ma'am.
both I'll share. No, not an issue.
Not this at all, that's all.
Yeah, I can get a feel that yes, looking at the codes doesn't make much
Yes, ma'am.
not, but just to give you the feel that yes, this kind of platform exists and this is very comfortable to work with this platform. Okay. Okay, let me quickly get into the other demonstration, which is particularly to show you how powerful this support vector machine is. So, as I did in the previous demonstration,
No audio, ma'am.
Ma'am, I think you're muted. Check, ma'am. Ma'am, you're not audible.
Hello, madam, you are not audible.
am I audible now? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. So here again, the first cell, as in the previous demonstration, I am using the same packages here. NumPy, matplotlib.pyplot, and the pandas. Okay, and also here I have another similar kind of text file, which I have again uploaded here in this folder. And that is, I'll show how the support vector machine can do something different by having different kernel functions. So if I just read the data, then here let me get the information about this data. So df is the data which I have imported, and here info stand for the information. There you can say that again the same thing, 3 different columns. First 2 are with floating point numbers, last one with integer values. Okay. So here again the target is to classify this data. Okay. So if I plot it, you'll say that this is the kind of distribution we have. This solid blacks corresponds to one class and the white ones corresponds to another class. So obviously it is clear that this is not a kind of linear classification where I cannot have a single straight line to classify this into 2 classes. So there are only 2 classes, but they are being so much overlapped that I cannot have a linear line or a straight line or a plane or a hyperplane that can separate out the samples of class 1 from the samples of class 2. Okay. So now what I can do, see here I'll show you how I can make my classifier stronger and stronger to deal with this kind of scenario. I'll be using only one model, that is the support vector classifier, that is called the SVC. Okay, so as I did same thing I'm doing here, the train test split. Then additionally I'm taking another package. Okay, so it is again a kind of plotting which is slightly stronger than the matplot.pyplot, and that can plot the decision boundaries. Okay, that's it. Otherwise rest of the things are same. Here I have taken the support vector classifier that is also in the package sklearn.spm. So again, whatever x and y I am having is getting divided into the training patterns and the test patterns. Okay. So mostly these things remain same for many of the classifier or the regression applications. Okay. So let me first do or fit the model. Here I have taken the kernel is a linear kernel. Okay, I'll show you the difference with this kernel selection. If I take a linear kernel, if it is a straight line, and using that kernel, if I predict the values, you can see that I'm getting accuracy that is only of 0.45. That means it is really not doing any classification. So when I get accuracy of 50-50 and that too in a binary classification scenario, by default the probability is either to select 1 or to select 0. That means I am not doing anything. 50% accuracy means there is no learning happening with my model. This is completely useless. I cannot use a model which is having only 45% accuracy. Let me do something better with it. Now, instead of linear, if I select a polynomial model, okay, rest of the things are again same. Okay, only I'm selecting a polynomial model, and this time, since I'll have some better result, let me plot the decision boundary. Okay, so here, this is the result with the polynomial model. Polynomial kernel, I get some kind of improvement in my analysis, and that can pull me to the accuracy of 0.89. Okay, here I can say that this blue corresponds to the class 0, and this orange, that is the range for class 1. So some of the samples of blue are in the orange. Similarly, a few samples of orange are in the blue range. That is why the accuracy is still 0.989, close to 90%, but not a good classifier. Okay, so if binary classification, then we should have something more than 95%. Okay, now third one, here I have taken the kernel that is precisely a radial basis function or a Gaussian kind of function, you can see, which will be having a center and distributed over a variance defined by this Gaussian distribution. Okay, so if I change the kernel to RBF, rest of the things are again same. So this is my third classifier. First I tried with the linear, then I tried with the polynomial. Okay, and I took the polynomial of degree 3. Then I tried with, now I'm trying with RBF. Okay, so there are different kernels. See here what happened. Almost all the samples are rightly classified. Very few are falling out of this blue, and similarly very few are falling inside this blue. So here you can see that now the accuracy has improved to 0.96. So with linear it was only 45%. With polynomial it went up and it was 89%. Now I am seeing a 96% accuracy. Okay, so this shows that what actually or how actually the kernel function is useful. Selection of right kernel function can improve the performance of a model. Okay, particularly for the support vector classifiers. So similarly, other classifiers also have some important parameters. If those parameters are not properly selected, you may not get the result which is acceptable. So now again, let me compare the same thing with other classifiers. So first I showed it for the support vector machine. Okay, so let me define another 4 classifier. Okay, so there I am having logistic regression, Gaussian, and also I am considering a random forest classifier. So it's very easy. Again, sklearn under these different packages are having these classifiers. So if you look at the sklearn cheat sheet, you'll get all this information, what are the classifiers available in this package. Okay, let me import those classifiers. Then I defined 4 classifiers corresponding to all these algorithms SPC, Gaussian naive-Bayes, random forest, and logistic regression. Okay. So again, I have the mesh grid created. Okay. What I did here is, say in this, simply it is not the previous text file. I have creating a logic XOR. Many of you may be knowing XOR is very difficult and cannot be classified by using linear classifiers or by having a straight line. Okay? Because the class samples are diagonally opposite, so we cannot have a straight line that can classify the samples of class 0 from the class 1. So in this, what I have done, I have created the random patterns and I have assigned them the class similar to the XOR logic. Okay, I'll show you in the next plot. So here is the sample creation, and then I did the training of all these classifiers. Okay. Let me plot the decision region. Let me first plot, it is for classifier 1. Okay. So looking at this, you can get a feel, this blue, that is this diagonal, I have the blue patterns. Along this other diagonal, I have the orange patterns, which are similar to the XOR logic. Now, if I try to separate out this kind of distribution by using logistic regression, definitely that is not being happen, or we cannot have a classifier which can separate out a distribution similar to XOR logic. Next, let us see what happens with the second one is the random forest. This is by the random forest. Okay. Classifier 2 is by the random forest. Yes, definitely something better has happened. Okay. So these classes are now better separated. Okay. Next one is classifier 3, and that is the naive-Bayes. Okay. Let us see what happens in case of classifier 3. See. This is what kind of result I am getting in naive. This is also not acceptable. I can see that random forest is far better than naive-Bayes. Linear, not doing anything. Naive-Bayes, slightly doing something at least, but it could not separate out these patterns. Had it been the radial distribution, definitely naive-Bayes being in the Gaussian domain could have been done something for me. So since it is like a Gaussian or radial basis function, so naive-Bayes is not doing anything. But random forest is far better than this. Let me try the last one. Last one is the classifier 4, which is again the support vector classifier. So by default, the kernel function for support vector is the radial basis function. So if I try that one, you can see that I get the best result by using the support vector machine. Okay. So here the base, I am using the default kernel function of support vector machine. I have not defined anything as a kernel function. So default it becomes the radial, and by having this radial basis function, I can say that yes, where it is classifier 4 CLF. Yes. So here I am just taking the auto values, whatever is the inbuilt. So for the SBS, the auto is the radial basis function. So by having this, you can see that these are the comparison for 4 different classifiers. Okay, linear, random forest, and then followed by Gaussian, and finally this is the by having the support vector classifier. So when I have this kind of another difficult distribution also follows with this. That is the kind of moon. So half moon, if one class is projecting into another, that also I'll show you. Yeah. So this is again, say here what happens again here also. I have 2 kinds of classes. Okay, class 0 and class 1. But the difficulty here is one of this class is projecting into the other class. So if I have this kind of classification, so again it becomes very difficult to classify them. So here I have tried, suppose this is for, let me plot it for class 3. Okay, see for class 3, again I'm getting something that is the base one. I'm getting something which is straight line, and it is not at all capable of separating out these perturbations of one class into the other. If I look for class 1, okay, same linear separation I'm getting. Again, I cannot do this. So last one is class 2, random forest. Yeah, random forest again is doing something better. Okay, so there is no hypothesis. There is nothing concrete to say that yes, which classifier will work. And within a classifier, again, if I talk about support vector classifier, though I showed you that yes, it is working well, but again, I need to select the kernel function, select other parameters. Some kernel function may work, some may not work. So we need to have some knowledge about the distribution of the samples, about the statistical properties of the samples. So without statistics, without the knowledge of probability, without the knowledge of how the patterns are related, considering the statistical or the probabilistic informations, deciding a class or deciding a model is bit difficult. But anyway, we can have this kind of packages where we have the inbuilt functions, and we can keep on trying, and with that sometimes we may get good results. So once we get a good result, we can do some form of reverse engineering to look at it and decide why this thing worked well and why the other one didn't work. That is also a kind of research. It is not that always I know this is the distribution and this is the function that will definitely work on it. Sometimes you can do some trial and error experiments, and once you get a good result, suppose I compared this, so I didn't know whether the polynomial will work. Again, I have the option to change the degree of this polynomial function. So I am not sure that whether if I increase the degree of this polynomial function, I'll get some better result or not. Okay, so sometimes we keep on trying, and if at one point I get some good result, so now the job is to do some reverse engineering and find out why one of this model is working fine and other one is not working. That is also a kind of research. That is again a research when you don't know much knowledge about the distribution of the patterns. I don't know why it has become so slow. Maybe because of the internet problem. So yes, Google Colab is very powerful in terms of this packages readily available. You do not, or you don't need to look into how to install it in your laptop. And even if a package is not available, we can install it in this Google platform also by using the pip command. So if that package is not there, you can install it by using the pip command and then try working on with these patterns. Okay. So that's it from my side. If you have any queries. Anybody? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I have one question. In your demonstration, you told about you have assigned kernel to different values. I want to know what's that kernel actually? Is it a kind of function?
The kernel actually, morning I showed you 4 sample points. Okay, where I said that these are not separable, and if I just do suppose in that particular one I did x into y. Okay, I showed you some points x and y. If I plot those x and y, those were not separable linearly. But now if I take a product x into y and I plot it in a 3D space, x, y, and in the z direction I plot x dot y, then the samples are separable. So the role of the kernel is from the raw domain, input sample domain. Okay, it maps the samples into a different domain where the samples are linearly separable. Okay, and then what is that linear separator? That again is reverse mapped to this domain that may not be now linear. Suppose I have the samples, I'll just again, if possible, I'll open those things and share with you. Just a minute, give me a minute.
Oh, okay, ma'am.
That was with lecture 1, yeah. Morning I discussed about support vector machine. Yeah, this particular one. Where I said that x1 and x2, okay, so x1 and x2 0 3 1 2 2 1 3 0. If I plot them on a 2D space, taking x1 along one axis and x2 along another axis, I get these are the points. If I say out of this P2 and P3 are the orange class, P1 and P4 are the red class, then I cannot draw a line to separate out the orange samples from the red samples. It is not possible. I cannot have a straight line which can separate out these red dots from these orange dots. However, along with this x1 and x2, if I take the third information, that is x dot y, so now the kernel trick or the kernel function is just a product. In my code, I am saying that kernel function is a radial basis function. Kernel function is a polynomial function. So simplest demonstration here is this kernel function is just a product of x and y. So kernel is just a function which takes this as the input and produces another output. So now if I plot x1, x2 versus x dot y. So the x dot y being 2, okay, these two orange samples will be lifted up. Okay, and the red samples being 0 here, they remain wherever they were. Okay, so now from the 2 dimension, I have been mapping into a 3-dimensional space. The dimension is increasing. Now in this dimension, I am having the linear plane that can separate out this red from this orange. Okay, so what I'm saying here simply a product function. Similarly, I can have different kernel functions. Okay, so these are the functions which can be used to map the input patterns into a different space, maybe dimensionally a higher space where the patterns are linearly separable. Is it clear?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's it from my side. Any more queries? Or we can take a break for 5-10 minutes. And I request all of you to join for the inauguration function, which will be starting exactly at 4:30. Any queries from anybody?
Madam,
Yeah.
in order to evaluate the performance of the machine learning or artificial neural network, there are so many evaluation tools like recall, precision, accuracy, confusion
Yes.
matrix, region of ROC,
right.
receiver operating points, ER. Actually, how to decide this particular parameter? Because basically there is a specific sensitivity. Sometimes actually we people confuse.
No. See, accuracy is the first choice.
Okay.
But if you don't have the patterns having equal number of contribution while you designed your model, suppose I gave you the example, it is for the diagnosis of whether the tumor is malignant or it is benign. Okay, so in that case, if I collect suppose 1,000 samples, since the rate of cancer patient and since the number of samples being malignant is very less as compared to the number of samples being benign, right?
Right.
The cases are in general, if I have the normal patient and the cancer patient, definitely the number of cancer suffered people or tumors are less. Okay, so in that case, the class is not properly biased. I said not properly distributed.
Correct.
So even if I calculate the accuracy, maybe I'm getting high accuracy because all my outputs are supposed not cancer. If my model says that nobody is having cancer, then also I'll have a significant number for the accuracy, because majority are not having, and my model is also saying not having.
Because
So
our
that
data is not properly balanced.
not properly balanced.
Huh.
So in that case, the accuracy is meaningless.
Correct.
Suppose again I'm looking for a surveillance application, okay, where I don't want any fraud and transaction. Okay, that means the person who is trying to access, he is having the authority, but my system is not allowing him. Okay, which is false negative. System is saying that he is not having the authority, but actually he is authorized to use or to have access to his own account. That is okay.
I have doubt specifically related to precision recall.
That is what I'm saying. So in that case, you are saying that I should reduce my, even I can compensate for my false negative, but I cannot compensate for my false positive. Okay, so basically it depends on your application scenario, whether you can allow somebody not authorized to use, but don't allow anybody who is a fraud.
Okay.
Okay. In this diagnosis, if somebody is not having the disease, but again detected, yes, that is again tolerable. But somebody having the disease not detected, that is not tolerable. So it depends on what kind of application you are having. If it is not properly balanced, then definitely it is not the accuracy. Either you need to look into the recall or you need to look into the precision.
Okay. Thank you, madam.
Yeah, welcome.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, I have one doubt. What are the other metrics to be consider, ma'am, apart from accuracy, precision, and the FL score, recall? Is there any other important metric, ma'am?
So these are the values we consider only for the classifications. Okay.
Yes.
But not for the regression.
Yes, ma'am.
Regression again comes with the cost function. That is either the mean square error or mean absolute error, and there are many more other loss functions. What this accuracy or the confusion matrix or precision or recall or ROC, that is considering the classification scenario. But machine learning is not only classification. Again, we have the supervised learning, that is for the regression.
Okay, ma'am.
We also have the clustering. We also have the reinforcement learning. Okay, so there again the evaluation mechanisms will be different. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So let me take a break for 5 minutes, then we'll be joining. Okay. Either stay connected or you can go for the tea and then come back.